It's not going to be Zion. It's number 1 Williamson. We're not going to glorify these guys. It's not a RJ Barrett. It's number 5 Barrett. It's not Cam Reddish. It's number 2 Reddish. We can't glorify these guys.
What is basketball? What is it? What is it? What is it? Is this basketball? Is that basketball? What is it? What is basketball?
Welcome back to Solving Basketball. Today's guest is Zak Boisvert, an assistant coach at Army who is just coming off a game against Duke that we're going to get into a little bit. Zak, thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate coming on. The least I could do after, leading up to our game against Army, against Duke, I'm sorry. The problem with these early games is you don't have a lot of film and, your deep dive into their Canadian tour really helped us. So, I appreciate your help there. And, I'm trying to now get you on full time in a consulting gig for us. I don't know, if we can pay you, but I was thinking maybe you would do it out of, you feeling you need to serve the country. I was thinking maybe we could talk you into that somehow.
Well, thank you so much for that. Yeah, that sounds enticing. Almost a little guilt trip there, but no, putting out college basketball videos in October or whatever it was. You might have been the only person that watched those videos. So.
And I was the one. I was the one YouTube video for the month of October, but it was, and truthfully, Jordan, it was a resource to us. You play a team that early in the year, you're scrounging for any film you can find, and we had those full games. But obviously, you did a fantastic job with those breakdowns, and they were certainly a help to us as we prepared to play the Blue Devils.
I really appreciate that, and you come from a similar background in terms of having put some content out publicly, even. As a coach, you run pickandpop.net. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, pickandpop.net was kind of an idea I had, really spurned on by a former boss of mine, Bob Walsh, who was the head coach at University of Maine, who I worked under for 2.5 years. And ever since I kind of tried to get into coaching, I was a manager. I was trying to find different ways to put information out there, because so much of what I learned were from the coaches I worked alongside and the coaches that were kind enough to mentor me, but also I just really went out of my way to learn as much as I could, and be it clinic videos or online clinic notes, whatever. And so I was trying to pay the favor back a little bit by putting a lot of stuff out there and a lot of stuff together. And Coach Walsh really encouraged me to kind of put something together online, and I ended up putting together a website. And I'm really proud of what it's become. What I wanted to do was I wanted to provide a resource, a comprehensive resource for coaches at all levels. And what I really want to do is I didn't want to teach down. I really wanted to kind of teach it up in terms of really try to get guys maybe a little bit more of an advanced approach to things. And I'm really proud of the community that's been created. Right now, we're currently fighting a little bug right now, a virus or hacking attempt. So it's actually been off. I've been unable to update for the last 4 days, but hopefully I'll get that back running before the Thanksgiving holiday. And I'm really, like I said, I'm proud of the impact it's made and the number of coaches that the site's been able to reach.
For sure. And if you're listening right now and into coaching, definitely go check it out, pickandpop.net. I can say from experience that working on 3 Division I staffs, we have forwarded each other pick and pop videos that you made and articles pretty constantly on all 3 staffs. So definitely go check that out if you're not familiar with it. Usually the first question, we got a little bit sidetracked here. Usually the first question is, if we walked into a gym right now and I went under the basket and you went to the free throw line, how many free throws would you make out of 100?
I would, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was a terrible basketball player, truly awful. I got cut my junior year, going to, by my high school coach. And I always give him credit now because he got me on a path a little bit earlier. He essentially just gave me a heads up. My future in the game wasn't to play, it was to coach. And I found that really cool. There was a moment of self-reflection on Sunday, not to get too corny, but as I'm ready to coach in Cameron Indoor Stadium and John Feinstein was was on our bench, and I read Last Amateurs when it was the first college basketball book I read, and I was immersed in it. And Sunday Night Hoops at Fox Sports had a great TV deal when I was growing up, and my dad and I would watch Sunday Night Hoops, be it Maryland, North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, whoever it was, Georgia Tech. And so there was a moment of self-reflection on Sunday where if I had told myself back then, being, the kid sitting watching hoops with his dad on Sunday nights, and we're reading Last Amateurs, and John Feinstein's in our huddle, he's writing another book. And if I had told myself then, I would have, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And so I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm a truly terrible basketball player. It's actually something our players here at Army always joke about it with me. Because they've actually never seen me shoot. It's something that I'm intentional with. I don't want to take away my credibility. I don't think, hey, listen, players don't care what shape, size, color you are, or how good of a player you are. If you can help them, they're gonna listen to competency. But there's an approach I take where they've never seen me shoot because simply I don't want them to I don't want to take away my competency at all, and maybe that's me being insecure, but it's so my long-winded answer to your question is I would say I'm hoping I could get to I'm hoping I could get into the 50-60 range. I'm thinking it might be more I'm you know what, Jay, I'm shooting for 50. That's my goal.
Got it. Well, that definitely makes sense. The credibility thing is something that I've talked about in the past on the podcast, where I can relate. Coming in as the analytics guy, I almost wanted to get rid of that stigma a little bit joining the program. So I can definitely relate a little bit there. The focus for this episode is going to be about scouting, and specifically as an assistant coach, your role in the scouting process. First, let's talk about generally, how do you guys, I guess, divvy up scouts using your 3 assistant coaches?
Yeah, one thing, being at the Service Academy, we're granted a Service Academy exception where we're actually allowed 4 scouts, which it's something that we're fortunate to have, but we do have an extra body, so it's an extra guy to rotate through those scouts. So what we'll do is we rotate through those scouts, between the 4 of us. And what ends up happening, though the league schedule change at times, for the most part, we'll keep our league scouts or add a league scout. If it's someone that we play year in, year out, we'll try to work it out where a guy has that same scout the next year, but it doesn't always work that way. It's not always perfect. Our league schedule changes, and it's, we don't want to give a guy a back-to-back, but for the most part, we have guys stick with their scouts. And, being in our league, we see a ton of Princeton offense, so we'll have a coach, Drew Adams, on our staff, takes on those Princeton offense teams. So he has the Holy Crosses. Air Force out of our league also runs the Princeton. So he'll take those Princeton scouts just so there's a continuity for our players and that they're hearing the same voice and the similar concepts. But beside us breaking up those 4 scouts amongst the 4 of us, what we'll also do is within our staff we have some specialization in that. Ben Wilkins will really take a big focus and look hard at our defense. And so for every scout that'll pass through his desk and he'll look at the opposing team's offense. And myself, I have a big part in our team's offense under Coach Allen, and I'll look at each team we play, their defense in terms of how we're going to attack them. What ends up creating is a nice little collaboration between the 4 of us, the offensive and defensive specializations, and then obviously funneling up to Coach Allen and how we disperse that information to our guys. So that's kind of we're lucky. We've had the same continuity. We've had the same staff for this going into our 3rd year, and it's kind of morphed. Our process has morphed over those 3 years, and we've kind of arrived at something that we're confident and we feel pretty comfortable with.
So for you personally, let's say you have a scout coming up. What's the first thing that you're going to do? What's the initial process to digging into that team?
The first thing I do, and this is, I'm trying to think of where I got this or who I got this from, but the first thing I actually do is, and maybe this is a little backwards to what some people do is, the first thing I do is I do personnel, because what I want to do is I want to create an idea, and it'll adjust and it will be different than the final personnel edit I'll send to that the team will see. But what I want to do is I take a very base approach where I want to see every guy they're playing in how they score. My first approach will be putting together a very preliminary look at what each guy on their roster does. Because once I've identified who they are and what they do, I'm then able to see their scheme through the lens of who their players are. And I don't want to dive right into their scheme. I want to have it without an idea of who their players are. So that might be a backwards approach. I don't know how many people do that, but that's the first thing I want to do is who are their players? What do they do? And now, as I get into the scheme, what do they do to get those guys the ball, or what do they do to get those guys their opportunities?
Is that done through watching full games or probably like synergy clips?
So that first process with the personnel will be synergy clips, and I take a very rudimentary approach. What I do is, and this isn't rocket science here. I'm blessed. I work at I work at the #1 public university in the country, but this is a very basic approach. Is I go to synergy, I click their points, and I want to see their last 25 baskets. And like I said, it's not perfect, but what I want to see is how do these guys score, just so I then have an idea of, all right, now I have an idea of what these guys are, and now let me start getting into the schematics of it. But from there, so everything I'll do personnel, that first thing will be, off synergy. And then what I do is I'll take an approach in that I want to watch full offense possession cut-ups of specific games. So I'll start and I'll watch teams. I'll start depending on when I start, but what I want to end up doing is I want to end up watching 5 games from when we get a chance to play a team. And so what I'll do is I'll start with the farthest back I'll go, and so I'll count up. Maybe at that time I start it, they've only played 3 of those 5 games, but I'll start with that farthest back game, and I'll watch all of their offensive possessions in that game, and I'll make my notes just watching that offensive cut up. And then I'll go to their next game and watch all their offense possessions. And then, to that third game, watch offense possessions. And then I'll circle back to the defense. So I want to watch their offense all in one, and then I want to watch their defense all in one. And that's how it works for me. I want to really focus in on one side of the ball. I think I can be more efficient that way. And I think I can be a little bit clearer about honing in on what a team does on one side of the ball, and then once I've established it on both sides, being able to put it all together. What I want to build to the point to do is that last game a team plays before we play them, I then would want to see that in full and be able to see the flow of the game and see how those two units coexist in terms of how their offensive unit bleeds into their defensive philosophy and vice versa.
That definitely makes sense. My next question would be, how do the stats figure into all of this? So a lot of coaches, in my experiences, the first thing they do is print out the cumulative box score. I think that it can be an interesting experiment to not look at the stats, to look at the video first, see what that says, and try to form some opinions without being biased by it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I do think, something that's very I hold to be very true, and it's something I first kind of stumbled upon by reading Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And essentially he said something that humans are very, very terrible at, and he said the weakness is accentuated by, not only do they not realize it, but they actually believe otherwise, is we are terrible at taking a large data set and being able to draw conclusions from it. So my point is, if I were to avoid stats and just go on the video, all kinds of biases creep in, and it's selective bias, it's recency bias, but also the other side of if I see a guy make a shot, his first shot, then I'm framing everything that he's a good shooter. So what I want to do is stats, kind of answer that weakness for me, is that they allow me to print out those stats and have an idea of this is what a guy's numbers say he is. And then the Fran Fischel line is the stats indict, the video convicts. So once I have those stats, I'm able to frame my thinking a little bit of this is who the guy is. And, maybe at a certain point, especially early in the year, I can say, hey, he might only be shooting 20% from 3, but we can't give him any open looks. He's got a great stroke. It's, he's he's going to start knocking them down any time. But I do think the stats really allow you a head start with framing a lot of your opinions.
For sure. Yeah, that the bias thing was something that I wanted to talk about. I think there's a ton of what I would call confirmation bias in scouting. Sticking with stats a little bit, I know just from knowing you and talking to you in the past, I know that you are into some advanced stats. How does like KenPom or other analytics figure into your process?
Yeah, so I mean that initial, like you said, it's so funny too, because I think every single assistant coach listening to this will be nodding their head at that initial like printout. You get on your computer early in the morning and you're printing out, you got you're printing out the box score, you're printing out the conference only. I'm a big fan of last 5 games. So I'll put my Excel spreadsheet together. My girlfriend actually will help me with that, where we'll be tallying that together. I'm calling out points, and we're putting together on our own Excel spreadsheet. But along with that, KenPom is huge. I mean, how he's revolutionized the game. It's so interesting to see his impact on the game from when I first got into coaching until it is now, and just how coaches' acceptance of stats and their general knowledge of stats have just increased so much in that decade since I first got into coaching. And Ken Pomeroy deserves so much of the credit as coaches have become more and more knowledgeable about it. Another site I love that I don't think is quite as popular is Hoop Math. They do some really good job. They do a really good job breaking down box scores with statistics, and they're really able to offer a wide range of stats. And in scouting, there's a couple that I've been able to pick out that I really like, that really drives that home some points. Not to get too, we're going to, though I guess this is the podcast to really dive in analytics. What a good stat is, you have to ask yourself, what specific question does that stat answer? And I think that's why KenPom's advanced stats are so good, is they answer a more specific question than any previous stat did, if that makes sense. So I'll kind of backtrack, Jordan, and jump in, because I want to hear your opinion on this as well. For so many years, people answered the question of how good is your rebounding by looking at rebounding margin, and essentially KenPom said, "What? That's a terrible question to ask," or it's not that stat isn't answering the question that you asked. So essentially, offensive rebounding percentage is a better answer or is answering a better question, because what it's specifically asking is, what percentage of your misses do you get back? And that's the thing that's how good of an offensive rebound team you are. And then on the other side of the ball, what percentage of your opponent's misses do you get back? And that's your defensive rebound percentage. And that better answers your question of how good is my defensive rebounding. It's that question that Ken Pomeroy's asking and answering more correlates with what you get from rebounding margin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Jordan, I just dumbed down what I think. You're really smart, and what do you do with analytics? I absolutely love. That's my dumbed down answer of why I love advanced stats.
No, for sure. And I think it has gotten some traction. For the most part, I think coaches are using rebound margin less and less.
Hope so. It was funny. I remember this is a funny story of I worked for Tim Cluse, who was at Iona College. And for those who don't know, Tim Cluse is as good of a coach as there is in the country. He's the best transition offense coach in the country. He is, when Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours, that's Tim Cluse. That guy's coached so many practices, so many games. He forgets more about basketball today than I'll ever know. I mean, just tremendous coach. And he's a very old school guy in a lot of ways, but he's also been very receptive to advanced stats. And he's changed his offensive system even in his time at Iona. And I remember talking to him, this might have been 2012 or 2013, and I said, he was hesitant to embrace advanced stats, and just because he didn't know it, he didn't have that. I mean, he was a high school coach for 2.5 decades. I'll tell you, his advanced stats didn't. He wasn't getting KenPom updates on his phone in the late 90s. But it's so funny actually to see how his style has been validated by a lot of these advanced stats. But essentially, I'm long-winded. So Tim Cool's a great coach. And in 2012, 2013, my one thing to him was, I was like, Tim, if you're going to do anything, let me just explain to you why rebounding margin is a terrible stat, and we should be talking about offensive and defensive rebounding percentage. And to his credit, he listened to me. So rebounding margin is the one where it's like, guys, let's just stop using that.
And I would say that field goal percentage is probably right up there too. To either use effective field goal percentage or just to split it up into 2s and 3s. I think KenPom has made that more the standard.
Yeah, I agree. That would be. I think that would be secondary. Certainly, I think that would be next.
So, last question about all this scouting. So you have the stats, you have the KenPom stats, you have all this film. How much of it is then going to the players?
And that's a line that's a thin line you're always walking, in that you're trying to find what is the right manner that you need to get across what you need to get across. Your players need to have the knowledge they need to have, that, but without weighing them down and not allowing them to play fast. So you're always trying to arm them with knowledge, because at the end of the day, knowledge is quickness and understanding who the opponent you're playing is and what they're going to do. It can give them a head start and it can give them an advantage, but you don't want them to slow them down and spend so much time thinking. And then also you need to be efficient in that you only have so much time. You can't, you're not going to do a 5-hour film session. You're not going to do a 45-minute film session. You need to be in and out. So that's the line you're always walking. And as technology improves, you can really find different ways to get that information to guys. We use, Coach Allen is very progressive with technology that we have in this program, and our athletic department has really, helped us provide for our athletes. So, not only do we have synergy accounts where our guys can access, but all the coaches have sports code, and we can, I love what sports code's done with Huddle. We're being able to create a video library and being able to disseminate videos to your guys, and for them to be able to access those on iPhones and on tablets. I think it's really helped our guys, and it's found ways to get that information to our players. And long gone are the days of printing out scouting reports and them getting it the night before, 2 days before. We still will print out scouting reports, and our players will get a hard copy. But as well, they're getting that onto their phone and onto their tablets where they can access it. We're trying to also find creative ways to have those concepts be sticky to them. So, I try to have some fun with it. We'll send our players graphics in the morning. For example, I'll give you an example. We opened with Marist, and they had a kid, Ryan Funk. And we try to have fun with it too. They had a kid, Ryan Funk, and where our big thing was no threes for Ryan Funk. And so I sent out a picture first thing in the morning, and it was a photo of Ryan Funk, and he's number 30, and the 3 was crossed out, and I said no threes for Ryan Funk. And then under it I said, please respond to this text with if Ryan Funk has better flow hair than Coach Allen, our head coach. And so that group text sent out, and guys are responding. And then in film, we have our results posted. Who has better hair, Ryan Funk or Jimmy Allen? And so my thing is I'm just trying to create a sticky concept in their mind that on Tuesday night when we played them, they understand that taking away threes for that kid is really, really important. And that's all we're trying to do, is just find ways that our guys can take that information and then go play fast without it slowing them down.
So since we're getting into the specifics a little bit, let's switch over to Duke. So I would imagine most of our listeners saw the Duke-Kentucky opening game, but now I want them to think about the challenge of then having to be the team that faces Duke the next game.
Yeah, I want them to think about, we beat Marist, great home win, a comeback win. We went on a shot by Tommy Funk with 5 seconds to go. And then we go, whenever we win, there's a great local dive watering hole here in Highland Falls called the Park Restaurant. And our staff always goes after wins. And we show up at the Park Restaurant, we look up, and Duke is beating the number 2 team in the country by 28 points in the start of the second half. So that all of a sudden we look up there and said, that's what we're playing. So, we got to work quickly after that. We obviously did what we needed to do with Maris, but we understood the task that was ahead of us in Durham on Sunday.
Not only did they have the dominant performance, but everyone knows your players knew who Zion Williamson was. Your players knew who RJ Barrett was. So how was it framed to the team, like the task at hand?
Yeah, well, what was awesome was Coach Allen had a great point, and he said one thing we really wanted to refrain from is, and I think with this Duke team more than any in recent memory, they've become such like superheroes and caricatures that all our players knew it Zion, and he was all over. And he said, I don't want his personnel edit to become a SportsCenter highlight reel. He goes, for one, our guys have been seeing that for 2 straight days. They don't need to see these dunks. They've seen all those dunks for 2 straight days because, that Kentucky highlight reel just kept running and running all Wednesday, all Thursday, all Friday in lead up. So he said, one, his personnel, it's not going to be that. They've seen that. They got that. Let's see him pulling up for 17 contested 17-footers. Let's see him dribbling off his foot. Let's see him struggling to play in crowds. And then another approach, he said, we're going to have trouble with this. And he's like, I'm going to have trouble with this as much as anyone, but it's not going to be Zion. It's number 1 Williamson. We're not going to glorify these guys. It's not RJ Barrett. It's number 5 Barrett. It's not Cam Reddish. It's number 2 Reddish. And so what he wanted to do is like these guys, we can't glorify these guys because these guys are getting it from our players are getting it from all areas, but we're going to try to humanize these guys. So, and he was very intentional. He not once did he say the word Zion. It was number 1 Williamson all the way through the game. And that was our approach to humanize these guys. And our what we try to do in film with all these edits is if we play our fundamentals, here are multiple examples of you can build a wall in transition. Number 1 Williamson trying to drive the ball into gaps and trying to drive a gap that's not there. Hey, if we can get vertical, here's an example of number 5 Barrett struggling to finish against verticality. So what we did is we took that approach and said, if we can do what we do every day, these guys will struggle. They're just like anyone else that will play all year.
One thing from a game planning perspective that I thought I noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I saw Coach Allen getting pretty mad on a couple baseline drives. It definitely seemed like you were trying to funnel to the middle.
Yeah, we're trying to funnel to the middle. That's our defense philosophy to begin with, but especially our whole goal for that stopping Duke or limiting Duke, because when you talk about that quality of talent, you're not stopping them. Our big basis point of emphasis was make them playing crowds. Make them playing crowds, and we were going to hold our gaps a little bit longer, and we're going to force them to than we would normally, and we're going to force them to kick out, and we're going to say if they hurt us with catch and shoot threes, that's how we're going to go down. And what ultimately they did. They end up scoring. They end up scoring 1.2 points per possession. They end up making 15 threes. Ultimately, they beat us the way we dared them to beat us, which is a credit to Coach K, is a credit to their players, in terms of generate. But we forced them to do what we wanted them to do. They took the second most threes in a single game than anyone, than any Duke team in the last 9 years. They took 36 threes against us. The only game more in which they took more threes was Mercer in the NCAA tournament where they lost, where they took 37. They had another game where they took 36, but it was against Syracuse 2-3 zone. So that's what we set out to do, and they beat us. I mean, that's what good teams do is the way you dare them to beat you, they do it. So ultimately, they ended up answering the bell and beat us the way we dared them to do it.
From a personnel and closeout perspective, was everyone pretty much the same? Like you were going to live with the 3 for pretty much the whole roster?
No, it was more relating to the gaps than the closeout itself. The guy that we had a short closeout on was Zion. I blew it. Number 1 Williamson was the guy we had a short closeout on, but more of it related to us holding our gap a little bit longer than we would normally in a game against another team. So it more had to do with that than anything else. The other guy, we said we were okay. We weren't going to close out to number 20 Bolden, their big kid, and he ended up going 0 for 1. We let him shoot a 3, and we weren't going to run at him. We were going to keep our big in the paint because we're going to try to muck up and just try to make these guys playing crowds as much as possible. So our approach was we were going to leave our 5-man at the rim regardless, except for a ball screen.
And the other thing that you guys did a lot was switch. I'm curious, is that base defense or was that an adjustment?
Yeah, that's base defense. We're going to switch 1 through 4. We're going to, basketball is a game for, basketball is a fight for space. Offensively, you're trying to create it. Defensively, you're trying to take it away. We're switching more than we have in the past, and we're switching now everything 1 through 4. That's our answer to the 3-point line, and that's our answer to just tremendous skill in our league.
Duke didn't run a ton of ball screens against you guys, but what was the mentality there, especially with RJ Barrett? I'd say his number, but I can't think of what his number is. Number 1,
number 5 Barrett. I know them all. They've been grained into my head. Our approach was we're going to play our base coverage with that. We're going to hedge their ball screens. We're going to be good at us. That was one thing we didn't want to change, was our ball screen coverage. Because the other thing is you don't want to get too pulled away from what you do, because at the end of the day, this is only 1 of 29. We're not going to get so far pulled away from what we do that it doesn't help us as the year goes. So we played our base ball screen coverage with that.
As I was watching your defensive game plan style of play, I was thinking, and like you said, it clearly had an impact on Duke. I was thinking this is kind of what Virginia does to an extent. I'm curious as to Duke's going to play Virginia twice. Do you think that a pack line team that is funneling middle and in the gaps, is that a recipe for success going forward, do you think?
Hang on, I gotta pour some cold water over my face. You just compared us to Virginia, so hang on. I'm gonna take a second to really bask in the glory of this. All right, so your question my bad, Jay. Your question was
like the pack line in the gaps. Even, Virginia hedges ball screens, but is that the way to guard Duke?
I think so. I think right now and I think with better length, you can do both a little bit. You can play in the gaps, you can crowd them, and then get back and maybe take some of those threes away. I think that now, but they're good enough that they'll beat you doing that too. I think first and foremost you have to take them out of transition, and I think it's something we really did. We only gave up 12 transition points to them. 6 of them were off pick sixes, so 6 of them were our offense. So truly their transition offense, because at the end of the day, I don't think your turnovers leading to their points, I don't think at the end of the day that's your defense. That's your offense creeping into your defense. So, and one thing I just can't stand is announcers saying, well, Duke's really good off turnovers. Hey, any team is great off turnovers. Now, maybe Duke's particularly with their athleticism, but that margin is so small that I just think I don't think it's anything of note. So my point is it's about your transition defense taking away their transition offense. And we only gave up 6 points to their transition offense, which was a huge win. I think any game you play against Duke, in my watching, is you first need to take that away just because they're so elite in transition in their athleticism and their skill on the open floor. So the first thing you need to do is you need to eliminate losing on that side of the ball. That means not turning the ball over. And then defensively, it means getting back and taking away their transition game.
Offensively, one thing that it seemed like just looking at the staff while watching the game was that you were really focusing on pushing the ball. So sometimes when you're an underdog, the conventional wisdom, whether it's right or not, is slow the game down, play less possessions. But I can remember one Barrett to Williamson alley-oop where you guys didn't call timeout. You actually got the ball and pushed right away.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind that?
That's how we play. Our tempo numbers over the last 5 years have been tremendous, and they're slowed down a little bit by the league we play in. Patriot League is the slowest league in the country, 31 to 31. But I mean, our tempo numbers, even albeit slowed by our league, the last 5 years, starting with and Coach Allen was Zach Spiker's top assistant. But Spiker's last 2 years, it was 14 and then 25th his last year, 38th the year before that. Last year it slipped to 67th. I think that a lot of that had to do with just how slow our league was. It gets even slower and slower. So that is how we play. You want to play slow, go to Navy. You want to play fast, come to Army. So that is what we do, and we take great pride in running off misses and makes. And so those opportunities that we, that ball goes to the net. Our break off makes almost gives us a little bit more structure because when that ball goes to the net, our guys know what we're doing. So we weren't going to go to Cameron and play slow. We weren't going to go to Cameron and get away from what we do. And all the credit goes to our guys with that they really executed that game plan. They didn't flinch for a single second. That ball goes to the net. They didn't back down. They got that ball out, and then we ran, and we were able to attack them early in the clock. And I think we gave Duke a lot of problems with our transition game, with how we attacked them early in the shot clock.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, that was a pretty big reason for the good transition defense, because you were willing to take shots early. The probability of turning the ball over goes down, and you were able to limit their transition game.
Yeah, exactly. Get the ball up on the rim. It's very important to us. And it's something that I feel good. We're 2 games in. I feel good about our break and where it's at. It was something that we took a step back last year. 2 years ago, the 16-17 season, we were as dangerous as any team in the country in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock in terms of how often we played in it, our effective field goal percentage when we did. And when you combine those 2 off makes and misses, so those 4 categories, effective field goal percentage in the first 10 seconds of shot clock off makes, how often we played in that time, and then same thing off misses, we were as dangerous as any team in the country in those 4 quadrants. And a lot of our focus this offseason has been about returning to that point and getting ourselves back to that, because we think we slipped in those areas and shoot the numbers say so. So it's about, for us, about being getting back to that point where we're really dangerous there in the first 10 seconds of shot clock.
After the loss, let's say in the locker room in Cameron, what was the message to the team?
We're proud of the way our guys fought, and we went down swinging. At the end of the day, that's what a very good Duke team, which, I've been coaching now. I've been involved in college basketball for 10, 11 years. I've played some really good teams. I think that Duke team is up there with any I've played. We played a really good Arizona team. The 13-14 season, I was at Fairleigh Dickinson University. It was the team where Brandon Ashley got hurt prior to the NCAA tournament, and that team was just so good. Their pack line defense was so good that year. You just felt like there's no space out on the court. They had Derek Williams. If I'm not wrong, they had Aaron Gordon. I could be wrong on this. Nick Johnson. They just had a great team. TJ McConnell. Talking about multiple NBA players. That team, and I'll say that Duke team was as good as any team I played. So, Coach Allen was very positive about our team, about they executing our game plan. We designed a way to win and designed a way to lose, and essentially, Duke answered the bell, and just the way we designed to lose, Duke did just that. And so, there's obviously things that we could have done better, and we've honed in on those over the last 3 days and tried to improve those as we get ready to hit up Providence, Rhode Island for 3 games. But at the end of the day, he was proud of what we did, and we had some West Point notable West Point representatives that actually came into our locker room and spoke to our team after and complimented what we did. And but our guys understood that at the end of the day, our goal is to keep pushing the limit about how good we can be and what does the best version of our team look like, and how can we get to playing as consistently to that level as possible as the year goes.
Well, I can give you some news right now that might make you feel even better about the performance. Duke is, as we're recording this on Wednesday night, Duke is playing Eastern Michigan at home, and they're up 48-13 at half. Hey, so that's got to make you feel pretty good.
Hey, there's a part of me that woke up on Sunday just saying, let's not be that guy. So maybe Eastern Michigan has a big second half, run in for them. The one thing I want to talk, just so often you two coaches, and I think too often we get bogged down, and not necessarily bogged down, but the focus is on stopping the other team, and all the focus on scouting is defensive in terms of how we're going to stop them, and something that Tim Kluse and Jared Grasso as well, who's now the head coach at Bryant and was Tim Kluse's associate coach for so long at Iona. There's just as much of a scouting focus on the other side of the ball in terms of how do they guard, where in our system can we provide opportunities. And that's as much as what we do scouting wise here at Army as the defense side of the ball as well. So before having a conversation about scouting, I did want to make sure I mentioned that as well.
Yeah, and how about in the Duke game? What were some of those emphasis? I would say you guys were really, really good in ball screens, making like the extra pass or the corner pass at a really high level.
What we wanted to do, our kid Funk, our point guard's just elite in pick and roll, and he's really good at finding guys. So we wanted to play in pick and rolls, and because of the way they pressured passes and got on the passing lane, we wanted to attack early in the clock and also try to get to shots and ball screens without a lot of passes. So, we wanted to get to pick and rolls without throwing a lot of balls, without chances for turnovers. So the other thing we made a big point of is because their tremendous size and athleticism at the rim, we really wanted to play off the paint touches, and we really wanted to get open layups. But if we didn't have open layups, we wanted to punch the paint and spray and find open threes. And there were even a couple of segments where it's almost a little bit comical. The shots we turned down to kick the ball out and play to a three, but it was more just the respect we had for the length and athleticism Duke had at the rim. And our guys, credit to our guys, they really embraced that concept, and we punched the paint and sprayed it and found open shots on the perimeter.
Is there anything that you think would be tweaked if there was a rematch coming up soon?
It's a great question. We'll get ready to play them. Maybe we'll be on the other side of the bracket and we're playing them in the Final Four.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Tweaks we'd make. One, they scraped us on baseline outs, their offense, so we'd have to figure that out. So they put us in couple tough spots. So we'd have to, be a little bit tighter on our baseline out coverage.
I remember the lob to Zion at New Mexico State. We called that the eyes play.
He got him. It's funny. It's so funny. The camera actually really had it. You could see him make eye contact with the inbounder. I swear, sometimes the best baseline out offense is simply non-verbal communication with your guys and being able to kind of communicate with each other without, I think sometimes your best baseline out offense comes that way. And the camera got him looking and making eye contact with that player and kind of, with his eyes pointing up, and they're able to get it. And that's what good players do when they put you in really tough spots. But answering your question, I'm happy with the shots we got on both sides of the ball. I think there were stretches where we got away from punching the paint and finding great shots and finding uncontested shots. I think at times we challenged their length of the rim a little too much. There's a 4 or 5 minute stretch in the second half where they were able to pull away, where I think we got away from that. And so, I think going back, our guys executed our game plan. I thought it gave us the best chance to win. So I think going back is kind of picking on those 6 minute segments where we could have done a little bit better job with executing our game plan and playing to that a little bit. I think that'd be my answer.
Got it. Yeah, and clearly you would have liked a different result, but I think almost everyone that watched that game came away thinking that that Army basketball is in good shape and about to head to Rhode Island. And especially because you're about to get on the road, I really appreciate your time with this and going into such detail. Thank you so much.
No, of course, I appreciate this podcast. I think you do a great job of giving some people a glimpse into the world of college coaching, but specifically advanced stats. So I think you do a fantastic job with it.
Thanks. And for anyone who, again, was listening to Zach, check out pickandpop.net. It's a really great coaching resource and just a college basketball hub. So thank you again, Zach, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right, great. Thanks, man.
no hand checking Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Tony Kukoc?